So welcome, Sreepriya. After a lot of effort, I think, and we are sorry for the inconvenience to all the participants because certain developments happened in Shimla. I believe you're there. There was a snowfall or something, and we couldn't make it for the morning session. So I would request Mokshika to introduce Sreepriya, who's taken out time for this session, and I'm sure we'll all learn a lot through your experience. Welcome.
Welcome to today's webinar. Today we have the privilege of introducing Ms. Sreepriya Sridharan. Sreepriya's journey began as a mechanical engineer where she gained first-hand experience in the intricacies of the oil and gas industry. Her passion for driving change led her to initiate the Circular Business podcast in 2021. Over the course of just 1 year, she produced and hosted over 100 episodes. Today, Sreepriya serves as a beacon of inspiration and leadership, leading the charge as the head of strategic alliances and partnerships at Karo Sambhav, a pioneering social enterprise committed to enhancing a circular economy and ingraining recycling as a way of life for over 1 billion people. Without further ado, let us embark on this enlightening journey with Sreepriya Sridharan as we uncover the path towards a more sustainable and resilient future. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Ms. Sreepriya Sridharan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind introduction and thank you for accommodating the change in my schedule. I apologize to everyone for the change in the schedule to evening. So without further delay, I will just go ahead and share my screen. Just 1 second. Okay, wait. So there's only one rule in this particular presentation. It's not going to be just me talking. I would request there will be certain areas where I'll ask a question to you. So please put your feedback in the chat. So I'll begin with the first question. I want to understand which industries are the participants from, so that I'll get an idea of what kind of analogies to use and what kind of examples I can use to relate better. So please feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, we have 17 participants, but maybe not everyone has a chat box. Feel free to put it in. Come on, let's do it. You have to support me, only then will it be a nice interaction. Okay, we have people from telecom as well, environmental consultancy. I should at least see 15 responses here. Thank you so much for participating and keep participating. It'll only be interesting. And I'll also get a nice feedback of whether you're understanding or it's going a bouncer. So today we're talking about, the topic is waste management and circular economy. But I just want to first touch base upon what exactly is the circular economy. It's such a popular term everywhere, be it government, be it companies, everyone is using it. But how does it really trickle down to each one of us? How does it matter to us, and how can we be a part of that ecosystem, right? 1 second. Okay. Yeah. So now, how many of us are really thinking of the products that we buy? I'm pretty sure all of us here in the past 2 days might have ordered something, either from some e-commerce platform or maybe for your daily groceries. You might have ordered something, right? And today we are in such a world that we really don't know where the products are coming from. ये भी नहीं पता होता कौन से दुकान से आ रहा है, because we have so much of convenience that we don't know what shop it is coming from. All we know is it is coming at our doorstep. And once the use is done, whatever the packaging is, or maybe it could also be just the product. So many of us might have purchased mobile phones or upgraded your mobile phones in the past 2 years. But the max to max what interaction people would have, a lot of people, is you exchange it in return for the new phone and you might get some basic remuneration. But uske aage who's asking? Where has it gone? What is happening to such a waste? So that is the question I would urge each one of you to freeze in your mind right now. Just keep asking this question along the way. And if it was an in-person session, I would have actually given you 10 minutes to help me understand any of these particular products. But how we proceed is, please do this exercise at home. You can pick up any of the products, or you can just pick up any of the product that you have recently ordered. And just for your own understanding, maybe you can just have a puzzle with your kids if you have kids at home. Just do that. Where is this material coming from and what is happening? What is the 2 cycles further that is going? It will help you start questioning the system in its own way. Is someone marking something on the presentation? Okay. So let's understand the circular economy systems, what we're talking about. This is one of the most popular diagrams. There are many representations to this, but what it essentially means is whatever material is being used at the end of its first life, you as a consumer or whoever is the consumer, it could also be an organization who's a consumer. Once that usage is done and you throw it away, can it come back into the system? One of the easy ways to understand it is nature, because nature is so efficient that we miss the obvious. We literally miss the obvious. So all of it, the very simple example is how the leaves of the tree fall down. And then in few weeks time, even if the leaves are there, you won't notice it because it's become soil. So I mean, that's a very simple example, and you tend to just like ye thodi ho sakta hai. Exactly. That is the level. So many of our technologies, be it aeroplanes, be it heating systems, have been inspired from nature, but yet we have not yet reached the efficiency of how well nature is actually managing waste, where it is regenerating its own systems. So when today in today's topic, I think to explain circularity, I would take the analogy of, because some of us are from telecommunications background, and but again the analogy that I'm going to take is relatable to everyone. I would go ahead and start talking of electronics just because you and I are communicating through an electronic medium right now. So what is a circular economy? It talks about designing out waste and pollution, that is at the design manufacturer's level. Just imagine if your products are made in such a way that वो designer ने ही सोचा है कि once the consumer is done with the product, each component in that particular product or whatever service that consumer is using, each phases of those service will never have waste. If the initial designing is done in such a way, more than 70% of the work is done. So that is what circular economy talks about, that whatever the systems are, there will be no waste. And what does that mean? Whatever the products and materials are there inside those systems, inside those products, will be retained in its highest value. It won't be like कि आपका phone का plastic becomes a park bench. That's only delaying the landfill life. If something is merged into complex materials and you create something out of it saying, hey, this is recycling, it is recycling. You have just delayed the landfill life, but that particular material will never come back into the industry. Think about it today. So many of us might be trading gold in the marketplace, and so many commodities are there. Can you think of a time Earth has its own limitations? Humans have their own limitation, how deep you can go into the Earth's surface to keep on mining materials. So there will be a time when it will become so difficult that each of these commodities will become so expensive. And since the Industrial Revolution has begun, we have already extracted more than 70% of minerals out of the Earth's surface. And that's not too long. And Earth has these elements inside it since a very long time. And today, you and I are talking on these electronic medium thanks to those elements that are present inside these systems. Because otherwise, we won't have this ability to communicate with each other from wherever we are. And the third aspect, what circular economy talks about is, can we regenerate natural systems? This image that you see, I've taken the half image from the previous slide. This is a technical cycle. Even in the technical cycle, can we regenerate natural systems? Let me give you an example of lead acid batteries. It's present in your cars, and it is also a part of your solar connectivity systems where you store energy in the batteries. Since a very long time, lead has been taken back by the industry because its life is very high, and the industry knows that we can recycle lead. But when you exchange your lead acid battery with the retailer wherever you're going, do you question what is that person doing? वो जो भी acid बचा होगा inside that lead acid battery, are we questioning what is that person doing with that? You know where these repair shops are. It might be a very small shop in your neighborhood only. Have you ever tried questioning what's happening? Because for that person, the value lies in the lead that is inside the battery and maybe the plastic which is around it. But the acid which is remaining, which is of no use neither to you nor to him or her, whoever is owning the shop, maximum, not maximum, most of the retailers drain it out in the nearest nala, whatever is there. And now you and I all stay in the same place. Today we have water treatment plants. Can you imagine how harmful it is that the whole water is coming back to us because of our lack of questioning, because our lack of provisioning of systems for them to actually drain out the acid? It is such a simple example, and we might not be able to see, but even if it's a dirty water, it still has some ecosystem, natural ecosystem inside that water, which we don't see. And by draining acid into those systems, we are only polluting and making the waterways extremely complex. And what in today's world, the infrastructure of the cities is made in such a way that we don't really see where the environmental damage is happening. It's never in front of our eyes. In front of our eyes, it's always flashy and classy, and we don't see how it's affecting the natural systems. So when we talk about circular economy, these are the three basic elements which it covers. It wants to capture. The idea is great, but we are still far away from reaching that in few materials. So right now, all over the world, a lot of research and development is being done to create alternate products. Packaging is one great example where there are a lot of European companies who are actually working towards edible packaging, or in terms of food products, because food, it's like roti kapda makan. Food is an essential part of everybody's life, and they started off with food because it will at least start somewhere, and people are able to at least not cause harm with the food packaging that comes in. A lot of the products that we buy in food products, you just throw it away, right? That's that one single use that you have with those packets. You tear it apart and throw. Even if any of the e-commerce platforms is giving you those plastic bags which says I'm compostable, very recently I figured out it's not backyard compostable. If you put it in the soil, it will never compost. It has to go to an industrial composter, which is again a journey which we don't know will ever happen, because the way we throw that bag into our dustbin, it's into a mixed waste that's going, even in the dry waste. So are the waste workers aware that this needs to go into the industrial composting? It's a question we have never asked, and it's something that we should start asking, like what is really happening, even if I'm consciously buying products which is an alternative. So now here on, I will talk about waste management and circular economy, relating it to electronics industry, just so that the concept clarity is there and we are able to convey and understand the products a little better. Yeah. So like I spoke earlier, there are two ways. One is upstream. So the box that you see, which is blue dotted line, that is downstream. And the other one is upstream, which is in pink line. When we design the materials in such a way that there'll be no waste, so all of those circularity is achieved at the design stage. And the industries have figured out a way to create that circular business model. Um, I think Punita ma'am would be able to share this analogy a lot more better, that today a lot of the investments, even the conversations, so many conversations that I've had through the podcast, a lot of the investors find circular business models to be counterintuitive, because there are it's a new idea that's come into the market, and really looking at the long term, how this business can really sustain. There are a lot of questions around it, and there are no data to prove. But that's where a lot of companies have now come in. There are a lot of funds that are trying to support this. But these business models need to exist. A lot of big companies, for example, Philips, has started offering. So I'll give you an example of this business model. Philips in Europe has launched a program where, when they tie up with corporates, the lighting systems inside their entire office is leased. It is owned by Philips, and it is only like a service that the company buys. So the entire ownership of the materials inside those lighting systems lies with Philips. And that's a brilliant model, because think about it, when brands come into picture, they have so many patents to enhance the product and its usability. Right now, they can't really, because of the patents exist, they can't release what kind of materials are being um, used inside making these products. So many a times when we do waste management, we have to literally dismantle and figure out, oh, maybe this is the material. This looks plastic, but it's a fused plastic. There are 2, 3 plastics inside there. So instead of reinventing the wheel, Philips came up with a model where they only take back whatever is the waste from their service. So if someone wants to replace their lighting systems, Philips takes back the product. So they know what is inside and they are able to invest in those systems. So that is one example of business models that I'm talking about. And then comes the downstream, which we are in which where we talk about waste management really. So what it essentially does, it has created multiple collection systems. There are so many different types of waste that exist today. It's beyond just dry and wet waste. Even the dry has complex materials. The wet has multiple complex materials. So we are not even in India, at least, we have not even started segregating multiple types. It's only very few places where they have been consciously installing multiple bins to at least provide that option for people if they know, okay, glass is separate, plastics are separate, but we are still not segregating dry waste accordingly. So creating that collection systems, and once the material is collected, you take it to recycling. Now, the idea, like I mentioned earlier, right? If, say, somebody is collecting some product for once collected and it reaches the recycling system, it has to be dismantled. Now, take an example of a phone. It will be dismantled. And once dismantled, you have to actually identify, okay, this is so and so plastic. This particular printed circuit board might have so many complex metals inside it, which is soldered, right? You've seen that green board, which is there. So understanding those, these are the microchips. So first understanding those materials, and then whichever material might have a recycling solution, it then goes into that specialized recycling system. And now the circularity comes only when the recycled materials are taken back by the industry to use it to create similar products, or it goes back into the similar industry where again consumers or bulk consumers or organizations, when they purchase the product or the service, those materials come back to them in the same form or similar format. So that is the idea behind achieving circularity in the electronics industry. Now, what is Karo Sambhav? That's the organization I come from. Karo Sambhav is a social enterprise who is enabling a circular economy in India. And we are really working towards making recycling a way of life for 1 billion people. Billion just because we hail from India. So I think it is worthwhile to even test that number a little more. We started our work in 2017. We started with electronic waste, and that is the year when extended producer responsibility policy was properly launched into the country. And we tested the pilot with electronic waste of this whole take back systems and trying to create that awareness and collection systems on the grassroots. And once it was a success model, we then ventured into plastic packaging. And very recently, we even started our work with batteries and accumulators, and as well as float glass. Now, plastics and float glass is something that we are working in a very project specified manner. And this year, we also started our work with tires. So that is where Karo Sambhav is. We are into multi-sectoral waste streams, and slowly and steadily, we'll be adding more and more waste streams as and when we build that capacity. So where is our main focus on? To create that value chain integration. Any waste you talk about, we are talking, the topic name is waste management, right? So if something has to go back into the industry, if I'm saying I need to use so and so percentage of recycled gold into creating my product, which is secondary material that I'm talking about. When I say recycled gold, that will become secondary material. For this to happen, there has to be efficient recycling technology. When I say efficient recycling technology, I mean the extraction methodology should be such that the purity of gold that is needed to manufacture the particular product has to be very high. And it's not just gold, it could be palladium, it could be copper, it could be aluminum. And for the recycling to happen, the grassroots collection mechanism is a must. जब मटेरियल आएगा ही नहीं तो रिसाइकलिंग तक कैसे पहुंचेगा? Even if you have the right technology, it will never suffice if the collection infrastructure on the grassroots is not strong enough. And for the collection to happen, awareness is a must. And that is why we have been focusing on creating that circular economy industry where we are also working. So if you look at it, um, environment, social, and governance aspects. Now, I spoke about environment and the governance aspect, where we are working even with the policy makers to enhance the policies that currently exist, create brand alliances to create that grassroots infrastructure, and also to work with them in collaboration so that they are able to use and identify what materials from this waste stream can actually be used back into their systems. So these are, in a nutshell, these are the activities that we do. So now I'm going to play a game, and I request each one of you to just carefully look at the images. Even if you don't understand, it's okay. Just carefully look at it, and then I'll ask you a question wherein you have to participate in the chat. Okay? Are we ready? All right. Just look at the screen and just observe the ticks and the cross. I hope all of you are observing the screen. These are just dismantled products from the materials the components and the electronics that we use every day. Just carefully look at the screens. Now, for a later conversation, just observe this particular black glass that I'm talking about, as well as this display paper. Just keep that in mind. This is how it looks. The chargers that we use, just observe the different parts once it is dismantled. The mobile phones. Okay, so what were your observations? Are they allowed to speak on mic?
Yeah, they can. If they can raise their hand, Mokshika can unmute.
Okay, so feel free to share. Just share the observation. Questions and all can be answered later. But just quickly share your observations if whoever wants to speak. Yes, that's correct. Wherever there was a green tick, it had recycling solutions. Nice observation. A lot of mobile parts do not have recycling solutions. That's correct. Anyone else would like to share something more that you observed?
I never imagined so many tiny parts and so much it can break down to. And quite technical
Yes,
though, but yeah, and lot non-recyclable. So I was
correct.
just thinking, can there ever be a world where, we can improve on this or not ever?
We are making that world slowly, but yeah, it's
Mm.
I think Mr. Rahul has, yeah, please share your
Yeah.
observation.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, one part which I could see was cables, which are not
yes.
recyclable. But
Mm-hmm.
globally, I'm working in global environment, so we know some of the players already supporting to recycle the cables, and we are also doing so. likewise.
Yeah,
So in India, we are not doing it, but globally, it is already there.
correct, correct. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahul. Yeah, I think you can mute yourself. Sorry, just to make it easy. Yeah. So actually, that's a very fair observation, and few more. Batteries are recyclable. Okay. Iron, steel made things are important, can be media sourced. Okay. Yes. So now, if you observe, a lot of the components that were inside the electronic devices, almost I would say 55 to 60% still do not have recycling solutions available. And when I say recycling, it's not downcycling. Like I mentioned in the earlier slide, right? Retaining the highest value of the component. It is very much possible to just strip the cable and take the copper out. But what happens to that PVC peel that is there around it? उसका कुछ पता नहीं है वो that will go into some fused material and it will not be used to create that cable again, the covering again. So those are the little nitty-gritties. And even in the chargers, if you observe, the charger looks like a very simple component, right? And so many of us have so many chargers, power banks that we use. But just because how little it is, that in terms of size, a metal is integrated into it. There is some chip also that is integrated into it. It's so tiny that dismantling those components needs manual work. Yes, you can crush it in a machine, but once you crush it, it will be a mixed material. You can't really take out that metal and give it away. So a lot of big machines can be used, but again, big machines which crush so many components, the data suggests that it's not highly efficient because then it's not economic per se. You can't create a business model. Then you have to just invest a lot in creating those, bringing those bigger machines. Yes, the technologies are available. It's coming in place slowly, but whether it's economical right now to be implemented on a massive scale, the answer is no. It still needs a lot of work. So now that thank you so much for participating. Now let me share a nice analogy. Now let's take India only, or let's take the whole world. Even if we consider 70% of the world, or 70 is also too high a number, 60% of the people in the world can afford to have a television at home. Okay, let's consider that number. The world population is what, 7.8 billion, I think. So just consider a lump sum 60% of people can own a television set or an LED monitor or even that laptop. Now, remember I asked you to carefully look at the black screen in the earlier image. So that particular black screen has a material called indium in it. And if I take an example from India or even Europe, both many nations have started declaring what material is critical for them. There are critical raw materials that have been declared by many nations. What is critical material? Critical could either be country specific, industry specific. It's supply versus demand. If the demand is high but the supply is less, it becomes critical. Just as how that microchip became a big thing 2 years back, right? Because the availability was not there, and so much of political and global impact it had. So just imagine this particular indium is present in the black screen. And imagine so many people use television, and not only do they use television, in every 4 or 5 years, people keep upgrading. There will be flash sales, Diwali sale, Christmas sale, Black Friday sale, and everyone wants a new material. People want to have three televisions in their house. No idea why, but yeah, many have. It's just that everyone has it. But indium being a critical material, recycling technology does not exist to extract indium from these screens. Even today, the industry is making use of virgin indium to cater to those needs. So just imagine a highly consumer used product. If we are not reached that level where the a critical material like indium can be economically extracted out of the screens, that is the scale of the problem that I'm trying to share. How it can affect economies in very soon, and how a lot of brands are still push sales in spite of knowing the kind of materials and where they are sourcing these materials from. A lot of brands can invest today in extracting these critical raw materials, but somehow it's not yet a manufacturer's priority. So I'm just throwing in some questions. Yes, there can be a lot of, some might agree with me, some might not agree with me. That's okay. But all I want to leave you is with a thought of how we are really supposed to approach materials, how we are supposed to approach these complex challenges which are lying around us. So now let's move on to the waste management part. Now that we understand, okay, this is circular economy and this is the complex challenges related to environment that comes in. So what is e-waste? Electronic waste is any such device which is either unwanted, not working, or obsolete. So all of this categorized under e-waste. And you saw different parts, components, dismantled parts in the earlier images. What are these gadgets made of? There are inert materials like plastics, glass, and ceramics. There are precious materials. And not just precious materials, there are a lot of complex, critical raw materials inside each of these components. There are other metals which have been being traded properly and recycled quite well in the industry, steel, aluminum, copper. And then we have a lot of toxic components. It's toxic because of what can happen if it's misused. Each of the components inside this have a particular use in our products, but if it is mishandled, it can become toxic. Toxicity is a consequence, not the problem of that particular material. And a lot of us could relate to these images. Either our electronics, it could be just cables and power banks that are spoiled. You still have it's rent free in your drawer for a long time. And unless somebody is nudging you, you'll be like, Diwali pe fir bhi tumne ek drawer se dusre drawer mein rakh diya. But very rarely will you actually take a choice to actually give it away. Or you just some of us might just throw it in the dustbin. Or you might exchange it for new products. But this would happen only for a similar kind of product. Either you exchange a mobile or a laptop or big screen products, but not your chargers. Who's going to take your charger in exchange for a new charger? I mean, those platforms are not yet available. Or worst case, you give it to a kabadi wala, you call this person and hey, please come, take it away and give me whatever is there, whatever money you can against the weight of the product. Let me show you what would happen if we unconsciously dispose of our electronic waste either in your dustbin or you call a kabadi wala and just give it away without even questioning what's happening to the system. Let me know if you are able to hear it. You're able to hear? Okay.
The Seelampur market on the northeastern fringe of Delhi is the nation's largest electronics dismantling market. The processes involved are replete with hazards. For instance, for circuit board recycling, one has to first remove the chips, condensers and capacitors by using blowtorch. After this, the leftover boards are put to open fires to retrieve the metal solder and copper. Alternatively, metals are also extracted by soaking the circuit boards in open acid bath. E-waste contains many toxic substances and creates serious pollution upon disposal. Cadmium and lead in the circuit boards, lead oxide and cadmium in monitor cathode ray tubes, mercury in switches and flat screen monitors, cadmium in computer batteries, polychlorinated biphenyls in older capacitors and transformers, and brominated flame retardants on printed circuit boards, plastic casings, cables and PVC cable insulations.
Now I'll take you to a social issue. What happens when your waste reaches such an industry? You saw because of mishandling of the e-waste. So this is precisely what we call the informal sector. See, it's not their fault. They are making a living. But the thing is, they also figured it out, right? This was a new kind of waste that started coming into their doorstep. Initially in 1990s, before people could start affording computers and all, such a waste never came out. And then as and when people started switching to laptops, they realized the big computers are of no use at home. So they started giving it away as waste. So slowly all these kabadiwalas started getting newer kind of waste. And for how long are they going to store? They also need to make a living. They started figuring out, okay, there are probably precious metals in that. So without knowing chemistry, they figured out a way to extract it. I mean, they still know what chemical solutions will precipitate gold and silver out of this. For them, the other metals still don't matter. For them, gold and silver are still more precious because that's the kind of metals they understand has higher value. So this is how a lot of it is happening. So these are the kind of pockets in our today's communities where we know that uh, these practices every day we do not see, and that's why we don't really question, okay, what's happening once I just give my waste away. So e-waste is just one example. There are so many other components and complex materials that we might be disposing of from our homes, which might have its own pockets which are mishandled. Now I'll show you a story about one of the waste workers. And this particular videos were captured by Toxics Link. It's a civil society organization, and they have been working very much with the government of India and Ministry of Environment to create better policies for the country. So this was a research they did somewhere in 2012 or something, where they captured what is happening to the electronic waste.
19-year-old Salman stays with his family in Selampur. Like most of his neighbors, his family migrated from the rural interiors of the nation. These are people who are in lookout for easy jobs that do not require special skills. Salman did not have to try too hard to get a job as an e-waste dismantler. It is a vocation that does not ask for much know-how or training. Unknowingly, Salman has become one of its many victims. Of late, he has started feeling dizzy and weak, but he doesn't know why.
पता नहीं अचानक से होती है। एक तो घर वाले कहते हैं नज़र जल्दी लग जाती है, फिर दोस्त यार बाहर वाले टोकते रहते हैं मुझे कि तबीयत ख़राब हो जाती है। मेरी उम्र 19 साल की है और 19 साल में मुझे तकलीफ़ हो गई, हार्ट बीट बढ़ जाती है मेरी, घबराहट होती है, ब्लड प्रेशर तेज़ हो जाता है। ये है जब दिल की धड़कन बढ़ती है ना, मुझसे खड़ा नहीं हो जाता।
What are the ground challenges you saw? Like this is, and these are actually longer videos. We have taken snippets so that it's easier to deliver during the sessions. I will share with Mokshika and Punita the longer videos. Feel free to look at it in your own time. So, what are the ground challenges that exist? One of the most, I know it's point number 4, but since it is related to the video, even today, just because people lack the awareness of where and how to dispose of the waste, somehow just because they're putting it out in their dustbins, or maybe they're just calling the kabadi walas, 95% of e-waste still is being sent to the unorganized sector. And this is just because of unconscious decisions that we are making at our end. And when we talk about kabadi walas, their systems exist already for multiple waste streams. So if you're giving it to them, they will somehow figure it out, and it reaches these informal processors. And not only so, what is also happening, one thing that we need to pay attention to, chalo, they might extract metals out of it, but they will only cherry pick those components which will give them money, because they are not trading it in a bigger market, right? Or they are not trading it back into the industry. They are giving it to somebody who's buying those metals. That's it. So what happens is, once they cherry pick these components after such um, unscientific process of open burning and acid bath. Acid bath is something, so there are these solutions where you can dip these, it's highly corrosive solution. And once you dip these components into it, even it can corrode gold and silver into it. And then they use precipitation material to extract those metals. So somehow somebody has told them this will work, and it's working, and they're using this. But all of this is happening in that small kholi of a shop that they have, and everything is happening open. See, there are 5 workers without any mask, no safety devices. In the video, you might have noticed how there are, and remember I told you about the chargers. They're such tiny components. What happens is, elder humans cannot really dismantle those. So a lot of kids are eventually end up working in this sector because all the tiny components that needs to be taken out. I mean, it's easier with smaller hands, and that's why you'll when you visit such markets, you will notice eventually a lot of kids working in these spaces. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's the reality when your waste is going into these unorganized sectors. And so that is where I'm coming from. What are the ground realities today? And this might apply to a lot of other waste streams. We lack the ease of disposal. And when I'm talking about e-waste collection, just because you don't know, right, where can you actually give away this waste? Is it even a waste? Can you reuse it? Can you refurbish it? No one is questioning that. We fortunately we have become affluent. The markets have become better. People are earning, so they don't care. They're like, "Kuch karne se behtar, I'll buy a new product," and it will just lie there in their homes, and once they're fed up, someday after 3-4 years they'll give it away, whoever is taking it. And then comes, even if there are organizations present, there is a missing trust factor, especially with electronics, because you pay a lot of people who own iPhones or complex big brand phones. I mean, I'm not taking brand names, but there are all your phones and electronic gadgets range from thousands of rupees to lakhs of rupees, right? So you have invested so much. So when you give it away as a waste, somewhere you are like, should I give it to this person? What will happen? Is this person going to resell it? So there's so much of trust factor. You are not really questioning what is happening about recycling, because the trust factor around recycling comes with the conscious consumers who are giving it to the right organizations. Yes, that is an important part. But even if you're just giving it away, you'll still have a question mark. What will really happen? Should I only resell it then? There's so much of trust factor that exists today with any kind of vendor that's still there. Then when you buy newer products, um, so many of us are from telecommunication industry. There are harmonized standards everywhere in your forward supply chain. Every material has got its own standard. Every manufacturing process has its own standards, which is monitored by quality control agencies. But those standards do not exist in waste, because it's complex right now. So right now, even so, when we are talking about this governance related challenges, the standards do not exist in place, and that's why it is so hard to even start working on secondary raw materials. So today it's easier to talk about metals and say even plastics, because it's easier to test those, because it's mono material in a way. And plastics are also complex. There are some products which have fused plastics, so it's really difficult to separate those two. But at least the mono materials can still find a way to go back into the industry. But the moment products are fused, it's really difficult, because there are no standards really of how you can extract. So there is an absence of standards. And then very few, now even if there are organizations who intend to do something and create this ecosystem, there are very few reliable organizations. And I'll tell you why is there a lack of people here. So now let's talk about governance aspects. India has been working on extended producer responsibility since, I think, 2000, and it got implemented for the electronic waste industry in 2017. It got properly launched in 2016. The draft rules came out. So what this rule does, it catches hold of the manufacturers. So when I say manufacturers, or producer is the term, extended producer responsibility. So producer can have everyone from, it could also be a manufacturer, it could also be a distributor of those products in India. So that is the definition. It covers a lot of the producers in it. Now they are catching hold of them to say, okay, whatever material you're selling into the market this year, I'm giving a rough number, you have to recycle 60% of waste that can be generated from your product. So they are not liable to collect just their product back, because that is not possible really. But they have to invest in that system. They have to invest in that kind of take back system. So that is what the extended producer responsibility talks about. So this extended producer responsibility also requests the producers to invest in this system. So very simple example would be, if somebody is manufacturing a phone, their core business is manufacturing the phone and doing the R&D around the materials for it. So take back systems is not their core business, nor do they know how should they approach it in newer countries and newer regions. So that's where they outsource this particular work to organizations like Karo Sambhav, and there are many more, and also to the recyclers, where they will take care that the collection infrastructure on the grassroots is established. And let me tell you one more thing, that this whole EPR, so this EPR is a service-based thing. So the brands will pay to these organizations to set up that take-back systems, and they actually pay for the delta, because it's you just keep on buying and selling the particular waste, right? So there is no profit making along the way. So the delta that is coming is paid by EPR. EPR, the brands cover the delta which comes in that place. So that is extended producer responsibility. And now the next question is, so like I already covered. Can EPR policy really enable circularity? Can someone just say yes or no in the chat? I would love to hear that. Or what do you think? Yay, nay? Okay, Shantanu says yes. Punita says yes. I'm just loving it how positive everyone is. So if you actually go, oh, okay, there's somebody saying no. So if you actually go and ask the people working in EPR, they are considering the complexity of the regulations. You will hear this commonly, that they are not sure if the way EPR is being implemented in the country can actually lead to circularity. It is one of the tools that the government has used, but it needs to be assisted with a lot more policies and lot more tools so that circularity is enabled. So one good development which has already happened, I think, is there is a critical raw material policy that has been released. So there are many such modules that needs to be released. EPR is just one pathway to get the industry started to start working and investing in these take back systems. But in order to we need standards for waste. We need to know what kind of materials can actually have business value, because ultimately it needs to have a business and it needs to have an economic impact so that people are able to benefit out of this. So today, EPR policy is actually catering to the downstream part, where it invests in creation of large-scale collection systems. They are attempting to work upon high-quality recycling. And then the last beautiful aspect is if we are truly able to substitute virgin materials in the industry with the secondary raw materials. So that is the idea behind EPR. But is it happening properly on the grassroots? There are a lot of challenges for that to happen. So that is where it is. And then now we're reaching towards the end of the presentation. So now how can we embrace circularity? So from my point of view, create that system. We have extensive grassroots collection mechanisms, and the collection sources be an individual consumer, a bulk consumer, it could be retailer, kabadiwala, bigger aggregators, waste pickers. Like all of us are connected by waste. No matter how big or small your organization is, or how big or small you as a person is in the whole economic system, we all are connected with waste. And that is where ease of participation, awareness. Once for collection to happen, people should be aware that this is a waste stream that they need to start caring about. So what I wanted to capture here is, one is creating that awareness. And also we need to, in order to take it at the population scale, we need the right kind of funding mechanisms, the right kind of business models that enables this transition. And we can go into detail in the next sessions, because this is a very in-depth topic in itself. And the next one is creating that ease of participation and trust in system for people. So now that we have spoken of all of those aspects, I think the last slide for me is this one. Now that I've spoken of this particular waste stream, I want to leave you with a way how you can participate. If you feel you can be the environment steward in your own organization or in your own residential area where you stay, please feel free to reach out to us. We can facilitate that awareness session, and you can even choose to volunteer with us, and we can help clear. I'm just taking example of electronic waste because it has policy systems in place wherein properly there are traceability and traceable and transparent systems that exist for you to actually start evaluating how your action has created created a difference in the market, right? So feel free to just scan it or reach out to Karo Sambhav. And I would like to leave you with this quote because I personally live by it.
I think it's a vast topic, but you've given it a good start for us to start thinking in those lines. I had a quick question, especially with all these new policies around ESG sustainability which are coming in. Do you see the roles of
Yes.
organizations like Karo Sambhav also taking a leap along with supporting organizations? And how are you seeing the shift happening in big organizations? Are they rethinking the whole business model, how to at the design stage also, and then how to recycle and reuse? Are you seeing a shift, or is it still at a very early stage in India or globally, wherever you are interacting with companies?
Yes, yes. So there are so I gave you example of Philips. I gave you example of Apple. A lot of these organizations have now started because they have been questioned on a world level by a lot of, because these bigger companies have been impacting a lot of economic systems in different countries, right? Not only with sale of products, but also um, the minerals that are being mined in different countries. For example, cobalt is a metal that is being mined mostly in Congo. And Congo has its own complex social challenges, right? So that is the reason why, because of the complexity of the materials being used, a lot of these brands are already being questioned, and not just questioned, they are also proactively working. The only thing is, right now in India, there are very few manufacturers that exist who are making the products. So there are mostly assemblers here in India. So while we wish to actually work, we are working through EPR with a lot of good brands, but there is a limitation when it comes to seeing the design perspective, because the designing is happening in other countries. So but yeah, there are products that are being designed, and even in India we have a limitation of releasing some products. So you'll see a lot of some good products which have been designed from an environmentally sustainable way have not yet been released in India, but that have been released in Europe and other places. So so these challenges exist, but yeah, I mean, it's very much doable. Only thing is we need we need better governance and better trade policies to actually introduce those products in the market.
True. Right. Thanks. Anybody else has any questions? Feel free to ask. Yeah, Rahul.
Yeah, I have one question. Thanks first of all for this insightful session. It was very important for
Thank
us
you.
to understand what is happening around the world and how we are becoming sustainable. I just want to have like to ask one question. So as we know, recycling is very important, as well as disposal is also very important in case of electronic products. So how are we looking at WPP
Yes.
compliance in India? Because globally we are following in our organization, but in India, how it is being followed?
Which
Though it is
organization are you from?
Orange business,
Sorry?
France, Orange,
Orange.
Orange business.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. So WEEE is very European
yeah,
terminology,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yes, we have been a part of the WEEE forum. So we while India has its EPR regulations, Karo Sambhav has been probably Karo Sambhav is one of the only Indian organizations who's a member of the WEEE forum, and we have been actually working with WEEE forum, which is an think tank based out of Brussels, to actually support in policy making, better policy making, and enhancing this whole EPR systems in India. And we're also working with them for creating these material balance reporting systems where we can create a transparent pathway where you can start monitoring. Okay, there are secondary raw materials that come out of the recycling process, right? But is there a way to start measuring what is the percentage of materials that have come out, and can we create a marketplace? So these are the kind of research work we are still doing with them. And yeah, again, to launch it, I mean, it's not just an organization who can do it on their own, but a lot of support is needed from multiple stakeholders to scale it up to an impactful level.
Okay. And good to know that I think you are the only organization in India following WPP. Uh, Maybe I have
Yes.
one quick question, following question. Sorry for that. Do you
That's okay.
also
No,
support
please.
on? Yeah. Do you also support in calculating reduction in carbon emissions and all?
So our organization is not, I mean, that's not our core, but like we refer to some standards which are there globally. So but again, depending on the type of applications that we are going for, if you're working with a US based organization, so they want themselves, so they, I forgot the name of the standards. So there are 3-4 standards which have these calculations and factorings that they have done for different waste streams. So we don't do it like that is not our expertise, but we can definitely calculate for the waste that has been collected and recycled. I mean, the calculations can be done, but we don't formulate the calculations.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Rahul. Any other questions?
So we have a comment from Mr. Rajshekhar. He's saying that if you have any innovative circular economy solution, we are ready to provide funds. So you have funds. He is the rich man in our network group, so he's always there to help
Thank
us.
you so much. I am
So
so can you please draw, I mean, I'll take your email ID from Punita ji later, but yeah, happy to begin this discussion.
yeah,
I'm also
I think
dropping
we
in
need
my email
such,
ID.
yeah.
Thank you. That's really supportive, sir.
Great. So I don't think
I
there are any further questions. So I think we can wrap it up. I think despite all the blockages sitting in Shimla, the snowfall and everything, you've made it. And thanks a lot, Sreepriya, for taking out
yes,
time. And all the members who were present today,
thrown
thank you
out
for
of the
your
office. They are like, now
patience.
you need to get out.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have
Okay.
pollution control board. Great. So thank you all the participants. Thank you so much. They've been very
Okay, so it's
patient with us too.